Star Wars The Clone Wars was an exceptionally well-written show, primarily because the show's writers essentially had free reign. This freedom, in the simpler days before Disney's corporate makeover of the brand, allowed the writers to take real risks in making the show, risks that paid off incredibly well. In this video, we'll be taking a look at 5 great but forgotten scenes that show just how great the writers of the show were.
Attention, Sergeant on deck!
The Season 1 episode Cloak of Darkness is incredibly underrated, as it often gets overshadowed by Boba Jedi, the episode that preceded it, and Lair of Grievous, the one that followed it. But though it often gets forgotten, this was actually one of the best parts of the whole season, not least because it completely changed how the show approached the character of Asajj Ventress. In the Clone Wars movie and in Ambush, her first appearance in the show proper, Ventress was treated more as a lackey of Dooku, just another commander that happened to be a Dark Jedi. She may as well have been a tactical droid in Ambush, and the movie mistreated her in the same way the rest of Season 1 mistreated General Grievous. Cloak of Darkness, however, changed that. It showed that Ventress wasn't just a Separatist commander or a Dark Jedi. She was Count Dooku's personal assassin, and for good reason. She wreaked havoc on the Tranquility under the noses of 2 Jedi throughout the episode, and orchestrated what amounted to a 2-man plot to free the third in command of the entire Confederacy from Republic military custody successfully. Her stellar performance in the episode is capped off by one particular scene at the end.
Viceroy, I'll be a legend for this.
I always had a good feeling about you, Captain.
You see, assassin, our plan went off without a hitch.
Our plan.
And I will, of course, make sure your contributions are noted in my report to Count Dooku.
I'll tell him myself. Greetings, Viceroy.
I always had a good feeling about you, assassin.
This little bit of brutality cemented Asajj Ventress's image as the Sith assassin, and in a few seconds did a lot for her character. It also showed how far the writers were willing to push the brutal nature of the show's antagonists, which is to say, very far. This scene was less important in the general scheme of things, but it was still a great scene. It comes from the episode Lethal Trackdown, the finale of Season 2, in which the Jedi hunt down Boba Fett and Aurra Sing for their role in a plot to kill Mace Windu. In a bid to draw Windu out, they selected Commander Pons, one of their hostages, to be shot to show that the hunters meant business. But when given the chance, Boba hesitated to kill Pons, and ultimately failed to do it.
Pathetic. Boba, do it. Boba!
That was Pons.
Only 2 to go, Windu. Come and find us. We'll be waiting.
That short sequence speaks volumes for his character and adds a new layer to Boba Fett that wasn't really present before. It makes sense too, after all. Boba was out to kill Windu because Windu had killed his father. But Pons was a clone of his father. When he looked at him, he saw his father's face, and when Pons spoke, he heard his father's voice. Though he would never admit it, to him, shooting Pons was just like killing Jango. Just like what he was killing Pons in a bid to get revenge for, and ultimately he couldn't do it. Politics have always been a huge part of Star Wars, and we've done a video on how they influenced the original trilogy in the past. But politics is a tricky subject, and when George Lucas brought Senate politics front and center in the prequels, many people disliked it, saying that it was boring and it didn't make for good Star Wars. But as we all know, the writers of the Clone Wars did many episodes focusing on Senate politics in spite of this, and they actually made them powerful and interesting. This speech from Padme Amidala at the end of In Pursuit of Peace is one of the best examples of this.
Isn't it remarkable that one can have all the power in the galaxy, and yet the words of a single senator can sway the thoughts of millions?
What do you plan to do about this?
For now, we must adhere to the principles of our democracy. We must let the wheels of the Senate turn.
Defeating a bill in the Senate is hardly a battle you'd expect to be featured in Star Wars: The Clone Wars. But not only was it in the show, but it was great too. The writers successfully made a debate over military spending into a gripping plot that gets capped off with a speech that isn't just emotionally touching, but it also raises some damn good questions about government priorities. Ambush, the first episode of Season 1, was probably the best possible way the writers could have introduced Star Wars: The Clone Wars. There are two big reasons why it did so well: Yoda and the clones. One scene in particular is a terrific example of how Ambush set the stage for the rest of the show.
Your faces I wish to see.
There's not much to look at here, sir. We all share the same face.
Deceive you, eyes can. In the Force, very different each one of you are. Reese, always focused on the enemy, are you? For inspiration, look to yourself and those beside you. Jack, concerned about weapons you are. Weapons do not win battles. Your mind, powerful it is. Outthink the droids, you can. Thyre, rush not into fights. Long is the war. Only by surviving it will you prevail. Yes.
This was the first time that any character in Star Wars addressed a group of clones as individual beings, distinct in the Force, and it sets the tone for how the show treated the clones very well. Thyre, Jack, and Reese are all made into distinct characters, even though they all looked the same and sounded the same, something skeptics had doubted the Clone Wars would be able to do successfully. The clones are one of the best aspects of the show after all, and this is really where that started, in a cave on Rugosa, with Yoda asking the three to remove their helmets. The cherry on top is how the writers portrayed Yoda. He's a perfect fusion of the cryptic, wise, old sage version of Yoda from the original trilogy and the cunning leader from the prequels. It's Yoda in his element, in his prime, something that we never really got to see all that well in the movies. The advice he gives to the clones, the manner which he delivers it, and his closing remarks on the Force on a whole is so classically Yoda, and it showed just how well the writers understood Star Wars. One of the reasons The Clone Wars was such a great show was how utterly dark it got at times. One scene, above all, is darker than anything that came before or after it, and it really drives the impact home.
What? Everyone, stop firing! We're shooting at our own men! They're not warrants. They're clones! Take off your helmets! Show them you're not the enemy! They're clones! Whoa. Everyone, stop firing! Cease fire! They're not warrants! They're clones!
There's so much terrific writing to unpack in this scene. The use of the fog of war, the general dark fog that had been used throughout the arc, is used brilliantly to obscure the true nature of the battle as it begins. The clones buy Krell's ruse here completely, firing willingly on their own brothers and even using mortars, causing even more casualties. Many viewers probably had some idea what was really going on here, but it still doesn't lessen the impact in the slightest when Rex pulls the helmet off that dead clone and recoils. The shock and horror of that one brief moment is incredibly pervasive, due not to just brilliant writing but also great work on the part of D. Bradley Baker and the animators. The small details that the writers slipped into the rest of the scene make it even more powerful. The desperation evident in Rex's attempts to stop the firing, the horror of the clones when they realize what they're doing, and most of all, the fact that it's visible that it takes a good bit of time for the news to spread. As some clones are taking off their helmets and coming face to face with their brothers on the other side, there are still blaster bolts burning through the air. The death of Waxer at the end, a character we'd grown to know and love, is enough to make this the saddest scene of the show. Never before has friendly fire been so effective a plot element. So those are 5 brilliant scenes that we think showcase the genius of the writers of the Clone Wars. But as per usual, I want to know what you think. Are there any other scenes that we missed that you think should have been on this list? Feel free to post your thoughts in the comments section below. And just before you go guys, make sure you check out all those juicy links in the description below. And with our Geetsly's Gaming Network, our Roblox is back up and running again. And we do need some developers, so if you're interested, make sure you send me a message on Discord. Anyways guys, as always, thank you so much for watching and I hope to see you in the next video.